Hey guys, did you miss me? It's Snack, back with another video. And today, the Leafs are so bad that they dragged me out of retirement. So, in this video, we're going to do a little bit of a retrospective on the Leafs, and I want to talk more specifically about moments. You know, every fan, no matter what team you root for, has moments they remember. Even if you're a Sabres fan, which, I am partially, I'd say. You can remember moments for your team that are just hard to forget. And these can be playoffs, regular season, anytime. Off the top of my head, Kane OT winner for the Stanley Cup for Chicago, back against the Philadelphia Flyers. The Martinez OT winner for the Stanley Cup in 2014 against the Rangers. The Chris Kunitz goal to send Pittsburgh to the finals. Even the Jets, actually, just this year, tying the game with 1.6 seconds left against the Blues in Game 7 to set up Adam Lowry's OT winner off the deflection. These are moments that you remember forever, right? They stick with you. And even a team like the Leafs, who do almost nothing but fail, have so many moments in these playoffs the past 10 years that I can remember. Let's take a trip back and revisit some of these moments. So, this is like a time travel, but back to 2017. I was in my second year of high school. I am now graduated university and working full-time. That's how long this has been. So this is my first real core Leafs playoff memory, aside from the tragedy that happened in 2013. It's game 2. We're in Washington. Game's in double overtime. And the fourth line's out there just trying to generate something. And Ryan Boyle, with one of the nicest passes I think I've ever seen in my life. Backhand, no look to Kasperi Kapanen, who's waiting backdoor, puts it home, double OT winner. Kasperi Kapanen, who, by the way, just scored for the Oilers to send them to the third round. Funny enough. But, I look back on that Kapanen goal, and I think, wow, that was an incredible moment, especially, it's a young team. They're not supposed to be there. They're against the President's Trophy winners, and they win a game in Washington. And, they follow that up, again, getting to OT the next game. And it's Kadri's shot, deflected by Tyler Bozak. And we're up 2-1 in the series. Incredible, right? Incredible. Young team, the vibes were just immaculate at this point. Everyone's excited. And, it's a tough series the rest of the way there. Game 4, just a pretty solid loss. It's a close one, but, better team won. And then games 5 and 6, we weren't able to score much, but Matthews was the lone scorer, I believe, in both those games. He got 1 goal. And, he gave us hope, but ultimately the supporting cast wasn't really good at that time. And, they end up losing back-to-back OT games against Washington to be eliminated, which, it was an exciting year for the Leafs. And, I remember, although we lost that series, being very optimistic for the future, because there's a lot of hope to be given in a 4-2. It's a hard-fought battle. Kind of reminds me of the Sens this year, right? You're playing a team that's got more experience, a better team, but, at the end of the day, you're a young team. You're just here for the first time. You're experiencing the playoffs, right? Then we move to 2018, and this is our rematch versus the Boston Bruins, our first rematch, I should say. It's a tough series, down 3-1. Not looking so good for us after 4 games. But we showed up big in games 5 and 6. A lot of depth scoring. Leafs win 4-3 in game 5 and 3-1 in game 6 to force a game 7. And, I remember in that game 7, so it's a tight one through the first couple of periods, a lot of scoring. But Kasperi Kapanen with a shorthanded goal to put the Leafs up 4-3 heading into the third period of game 7. They're 1 period away from getting revenge on Boston and winning their first playoff series in well over a decade. And that was a horrible third period. Leafs give up 4 unanswered as they lose 7-4. Tough series, obviously, but we were the underdog in that series, and Boston's a great team. It's a tough one, but, didn't show up when it mattered, right? Third period, defense just collapsed. Anderson let in a tough goal, and it happens, right? So, we move on to next year, and we get a rematch versus Boston. It's okay, now this is our year. Now we might have enough to overcome these guys. I'm going to say right now, I don't think anything great even happened. No great moments, in 2019. I felt like that Kapanen one the year before really stuck with me. The 2019, good games to take the 3-2 series lead, certainly. But, after getting the opening goal in Game 6, they get pummeled the rest of the game. And that continued to Game 7, where we got blown out 5-1, Not close. And story remains the same. These guys just aren't showing up in the matters. That's the story. 2020, COVID hits. We end up in the play-in round against the Blue Jackets. Great. This is the first real, I would say, inferior opponent. The Leafs have been up against. They played Washington, Boston twice. It's a great opportunity to prove yourself. And I just remember the first few games were really disappointing. Ends up 1-1 after 2. And in the third game, Dubois in overtime, I remember that killed me. And, this was when I was actually running Snack Hyman. And, come out flat in Game 4. Just look defeated for the most part. And they're down 3-0 late in the third period. And I remember I went downstairs to my dad's office, and I just started recording a video. Because I think might have even been on IG Live there. But yeah, I was devastated. I mean, this is a team we should beat, and it's frustrating, man, right? It's frustrating. And they took John Tortorella's credit. I think he coached that team really well, and they believed in themselves, and they played a good game. But, I hear the horn go one time off my dad's TV. And I'm like, okay, well, it's not over, right? So I go out there. They score again. Crazy. It's like within a minute, 2 goals. Unbelievable. And in the dying seconds of the third period, my boy Zach Hyman scores and ties the game. This is the most unbelievable comeback I have seen in my life to this day for the Leafs. And they've had some crazy comebacks. 3 goals in the final 5 minutes of a game where you are facing elimination. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The vibes are immaculate, when we tie that game. And you're still nervous, but, we're feeling good. And, what do you know? Nick Foligno takes a dumb tripping penalty in overtime. He's frustrated about it. He goes to the box. And right off the draw, back to Riley. He keeps it in, pushes it into JT. And who's there in the slot? It's our hero, Auston Matthews. Scores the game-winning goal. We're alive. We're alive when all hope was lost. This was arguably the best game I've ever seen the Leafs play in terms of a comeback, in terms of showing resilience. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it at the time. It was just outstanding to me that this team, overcame that deficit. And they follow it up. It felt like a turning point, and they follow it up, not even showing up in Game 5. You lose 3-0. 3-0 after one of the most improbable, insane comebacks I think I've ever seen in my life. That stung. That stung a lot. And again, this is a great moment, and the team didn't show up when it mattered. That's the story. So then we head into the COVID-shortened year, and we're in the North Division that year, and it's Leafs versus Habs in the first round. In the first game, John Tavares takes a nasty knee from Corey Perry to the head. Obviously not intentional, but, it's a horrible break. It's just disgusting. Seeing him laying on the ice there, get stretchered off, and we end up losing that game. And I remember I ranted about that after the game. Not necessarily the knee, but just the way we played, right, against Montreal. Because, again, this is an inferior opponent. This is not a team that did well. They were the 4th seed in our division, if I remember correctly. And, our division wasn't even good. So disappointing start. But hey, the Leafs win 3 games in a row after this. They just maul Montreal. In one game, I think they had 7 unanswered goals. Something crazy, right? They were just playing phenomenal. They take a commanding 3-1 series lead. I'm like, okay, finally. They figured it out. This is it. Game 5 overtime starts. Zach Bogosian pinches in deep and leaves Galchenyuk at the point. And Galchenyuk makes, to this day, what I consider one of the worst passes I've ever seen in my life. Point to point. Gets intercepted by Cole Caulfield, who has Suzuki streaking with him. Gives it to Suzuki. Puts it past Campbell. And that's the game. We're going back to Montreal for Game 6. Tough one, but hey, it's an OT loss. You were right there, right? And it's just an errant play, big mistake, obviously, but it is what it is. Game 6, again, overtime. And they're just battering Price in this OT. Just outshooting the Habs, I believe, at the time of the turnover, 13-1. But the turnover did happen. It was Travis Dermott in his own end, spinorama pass to the other team. Kotkaniemi shoots, scores. Despite, how well they played, the Leafs lose in overtime, and we head back to Toronto. And it's like, okay, listen. Obviously, the fan base is losing it at this point. But 2 overtime losses, and in the second one, you looked like the far superior team. We were the better team, I thought, for most of that series. And Game 7, what happens? You'll never guess. They don't show up, right? They lose 3-1 with Nylander scoring like in the last couple minutes, garbage time. And that's the series. And it's a 3-1 choke. It was 3-1. We'll never forget that one. That is the worst series I think I've seen the Leafs play. Just period. I mean, especially given the opponent, and then granted, they did go to the finals afterwards, but I thought, their path was pretty easy. It's kind of a fluky run for Montreal. And, Habs fans, you can make fun of me all you want, right? Because you guys got to go to the finals. We lost in the first round. That's how it goes. 2022, defending Cup champs now. So we've played 2 bad opponents, I would say. And now we're playing the defending Stanley Cup champions, back-to-back. Leafs vs. Tampa, series 2-2 after 4 games. Probably about the best you can ask for from the Leafs. They're a good team, but you're playing a very playoff experienced team in Vasilevsky, right? So, Leafs down 2-0 after 1, and Tavares scores in the second. Riley and Nylander score to go up 3-2, and McDonough ties the game, right? But Auston Matthews in the final 5 minutes of the game with a rocket gets past the goalie and puts us up 3-2 in the series. We held on. What a moment. I remember where I was during that game. Just an incredible feeling, after they tied it, right after we took the lead there in the third. Matthews putting it in. That's what you want, man. That's what you want in a leader. Leafs up 3-2. Tampa on the brink, OT in Game 6. Not Anthony Cirelli. It was Braden Point that game to extend the series. And before the series even started, I had bought tickets to Game 7 if it happened, because we did have home ice advantage in that series. And so I ended up going with my dad. And, it was an awesome experience, obviously, being there for a Game 7 in the playoffs. You can't really ask for anything more than that. And Nick Paul happened. Nick Paul scores early, takes the lead. Toronto ties it, but the goal was negated by one of the worst interference penalties I've ever seen in my life on Justin Hall. What is traditionally just a pick play. I mean, it happens all the time in the NHL. But, they call it on us. Unfortunate, takes the goal away. We do tie the game. And then Nick Paul happens again. What on earth is going on? And that third period, I've never seen a more dead, lockdown game in my life. Tampa just shut us down. Plain and simple. Losing 7. The team does not show up when it matters. Again. And that's the story. At this point, they still haven't won a series. We are 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 6 years. And the last 5, you've lost in the deciding game of the series, in which you didn't show up for either an important portion or the entire game. 2023, we get a rematch versus the Lightning, and it's like, oh God, guys, this is bad. Obviously we still have hope we can beat these guys, but they just beat us last year. They came back, we were up 3-2 in the series, and they come back with an OT win and then just pummel us in our barn. Horrible Game 1 against Tampa that year, followed by a much better effort in Game 2. Down 3-2 in that game, and then Ryan O'Reilly ties with a minute left. And late in overtime, Morgan Riley, game winner. Beautiful shot, just beats Vasilevsky. Leafs up 2-1. I believe that's, Game 3. I think I said Game 2. But, Game 4, we're down 4-1 after 2 periods, right? It looks like, okay, we're going back to 2-2. At best, this is a 6-game series, right? So, down 4-1, Matthews scores twice, and Riley ties it with 4 minutes to go. Amazing comeback that game. And Sergachev ended up tripping Nylander 2 minutes into the overtime. And who but Alex Kerfoot, who everyone was complaining about, scoring the OT winner. And the Leafs are up 3-1. And this is, obviously we were up 3-1 against Montreal, so we can't get, our hopes up too high. But, I mean, amazing moment, right? You got the Cup champs on the brink. You got to, win one of the next 3 games, right? That's the situation. So, what a moment. What a moment. You lose Game 5 on home ice. Close game, obviously, is I think 4-2, but Tampa played well that game. It happens. The team's going to give pushback. The last game's the hardest one to win. And Game 6, very low-scoring game. I believe 1-1. I could be wrong, but 1-1. And 4 minutes into overtime, Tavares, playing with Nyes, and goes behind the net, wraps around out front, just puts it on, and just a weird deflection off of Tampa's defense. The streak is ended. The Toronto Maple Leafs, in the 7th year of their playoff streak, have won a round. This is the highlight of my life. I can remember jumping up and down with my dad, and I think my brother was there too. It was just awesome, man. It was awesome. Something I'll always remember. What a moment. What a series. The Leafs are finally on to round 2, and great for the Leafs. We thought we were going to have to play Boston if we won this series, and Boston had the best record of any team in NHL history. Most points. So, you're probably losing that series. You'd expect, right? Well, the Florida Panthers had other plans. The Florida Panthers come back down 3-1 against Boston and win the series in overtime in Boston. And we're playing the Florida Panthers. And obviously all the "we want Florida," all that stuff, all that good stuff. So we end up getting decimated. In the first 3 games of that series, we scored a max of 2 goals in any game that series. And lose 3 straight, including an overtime in Game 3 by Sam Reinhart. You win a close one in Florida to extend the series. A good defensive game for the Leafs. But another OT game. Nick Cousins on the screen where Gudis is holding the stick. Screams in Joe Wall's face. The Florida Panthers eliminate the Leafs in 5 games. They were never in this series. And a team that was a wild card. And obviously, give the Florida Panthers a lot of credit. They beat, the Boston Bruins were the President's Trophy winners. No one expected them to win that series. But, we got our lunch fed to us by Florida, So, wasted moment, wasted opportunity. And the story stays the same to an extent. But we got a taste. We got a series win. You're looking to build on it the next year. 2024, Boston. Again. And this series started horribly for Toronto. Blown out Game 1. Come back strong for Game 2, with a gutsy comeback win in Boston. Go home for a Brad Marchand game winner in Game 3 after the Leafs tied it in the 3rd. I was at a concert that night watching it on the bar TV. Not a fun one to remember. And, Game 4 we don't show up. We lose 3-1 in a game we were really never in. But, Leafs Game 5. It's tied 1-1, goes to overtime. And early in overtime, Tavares drives the net, and Matthew Nyes, the rookie this year, I know he'd played the playoffs the year before, but he was a rookie this year, buries it to extend the series to 6 games. And, what a feeling that was. I still didn't expect him to win, obviously, but, what a moment for the rookie to give the Leafs the win in that game. And, we were ecstatic. We were happy. We were feeling, okay, we got some momentum going back, right? Back to Toronto. And the Leafs don't disappoint in this one. Defensive 2-1 win. Nylander scoring both goals. That becomes the theme. And Boston only cutting the lead with a second to go in that one, which unfortunately was the incident that injured Joe Wall and ended his season, who was playing great. Not that Samsonov was the reason we lost this series, but Game 7, familiar story. It's a close, gritty back-and-forth game, and we score 9 minutes into the 3rd. Nylander, again. This guy, clutch, man, clutch. And, no goals to this point in the game. It was so defensive, and we finally break through. And it's like we are 11 minutes away from winning a series in Boston, getting revenge finally on these guys who have tormented the fans of this franchise for the past decade. And not even, like, I think a little over a minute later, it's Hampus Lindholm was just a fluky shot, beats Samsonov over the glove, or the blocker, I think it was. You got to have that one. It was a tough one. And, it ends up going to overtime. And not even like a minute into overtime, awful play by Riley and Marner as Pastrnak comes off the bench. Grade A chance, cuts out front. Samsonov doesn't get a poke check off in time and ends our season. And that's the 4th Game 7 loss to Boston in 11 years. You don't really know what to say about that one. That was, and it's one where we weren't in the series, right? We were down 3-1 in the series. And I was like, okay, we're losing. It is what it is. We're kind of in a in-between year, right? We had a general manager change in the offseason prior. So I wasn't like, I didn't have my hopes up. And they dragged me back into it. And they end up doing that in Game 7. Just heartbreaking loss, right? And the story remains the same, And I will say this was probably their best effort in a Game 7. But the result's the same. Leafs lose in a deciding game. The story remains the same. And we regressed from the year before. And here we are. 2025. Lots of moments this playoff run. Domi's OT winner. What a moment. The son of Ty Domi scoring in a series against Ottawa to win a game. Put the series up 2-0 Leafs. Amazing. Simone Benoit, who was also a huge part in the Domi goal, ends up scoring an OT winner. What an insane moment. I was freaking out. Like, it was hilarious. We were laughing. And it's 3-0 in the series. Amazing. And, we have those 2 bad games, right? The Leafs kind of looking like the Leafs in Game 5. But, as soon as Ottawa ties that with the Perron goal, it's kind of a fluky one up over the shoulder, hits the back of Stolar's mask. Pacioretty responds. And this is something the team hasn't seen before, right? What a moment for a guy who wasn't even playing hockey, as far as a few weeks ago. And he's now scored the game-winning, series-winning goal. And, everyone's coming out of this first-round series saying, okay, they faltered a little bit, but this team is different. This team could do it, right? This team might have potential, but you're up against Florida, right? It's a tough opponent. It's a team you've seen before a couple of years ago, and they spanked you. So, this is the best Leafs team we've seen so far, and that's what we saw out of the gate. I was lucky enough to go to Game 1. And, great start. Nylander 2 goals. Riley with that goal to respond to the Panthers' power play. And, we're up 4-1 and heading into the third. And, Panthers, to their credit, fought back hard. They got a couple goals in short time there. And it's a 4-3 game for most of the third. And I will never forget, from my seats, I see towards me, Joseph Wall streaking down the ice on a breakaway. Mitch Marner passes it up to him.
What the hell are you talking about?
And Matthew Knies buries it. What a goal. And puts the Leafs up 5-3. And it was a huge goal because the Panthers ended up scoring and making it 5-4. But that's it. And they can't claw their way back into the game. Leafs win 5-4. And what a moment for Matthew Knies. Again, this kid is so clutch. Scoring to win the Leafs the game. Game 2, another hard-fought win, 4-3. And to the Leafs' credit, they just played a good defensive game, and this was a closer one. But, Cats played a good game, I thought, as well. But, yeah, another Leafs win, 2-0. Oh, my God. No one expected this. No one expected this from this team, right? As much as, everyone's hyped off the Ottawa win, you beat Ottawa, right? You didn't beat Tampa Bay, and Florida destroyed Tampa Bay in the first round. So, coming off that, now we are up 2-0. We're heading into Florida. And we're up 3-1 early in the second. Tavares scores that amazing deflection goal up over the shoulder of Bobrovsky. Things are looking amazing. We are on the precipice of going up 3-0 in this series against the defending Stanley Cup champions. Who would have thought? The Toronto Maple Leafs? Are you kidding me? Yeah, they were kidding us. 2 goals in a minute. Neither of which was great. I thought the first one's just a bad goal by Wall. It can't squeak through there. And Carlo did his best, but ends up getting shoved into the net by a diving Panther. And then you get Another one that was just a terrible shot from the point. Thomas Nosek, of all people, right? And it's like, come on. Nosek scoring, are you serious? Okay, down 4-3. Tough game. And I was pretty demoralized at this point. But Morgan Riley, third period, just puts the puck on net. They got some bodies out front. Deflects off of Bobrovsky, off of Seth Jones, into the net. You got to get lucky sometimes, right? And they're back in the game. They are one shot away from burying the Florida Panthers down 3-0 in this series. And overtime comes. A lot of chances for both teams, I thought. But some good defense, too. And what ends up going in is just an unlucky deflection. Brad Marchand just, again, puts the puck on net. It's a theme we've seen in these playoffs. You put the puck to the net, good things happen. And Marchand ends up scoring, and they win the game. And give the Panthers life. I thought, if we win that game, it's pretty much it, And now the Panthers are down 2-1 in a series they're very much in. And, yeah, it's a tough one. So you're like, okay, as much as the Leafs lost, they played a great game. They could be right back in it here. Next game, 4 penalties in the first period, including a delay of game while they were already shorthanded. The 5-on-3, Matthew Knies gets out of the box, and, I thought he's kind of not so much effort getting back there, but at the end of the day, it was a 5-on-3, right? You can't let that happen in the playoffs. And Matthew Tkachuk gets it across the net, and they bury it. Carter Verhaeghe, and 1-0 Panthers, and that ends up being the game-winning goal. Leafs really didn't get anything going in the second period. This was a snooze fest. It was a snooze fest of a game. And any chances the Leafs did get, they never capitalized and never got good shots off of missing the net, whatever it may be. Lose again, 2-2. And already at this point, a lot of fans are despondent, right? Because they're like, we've seen this a million times before. We've seen it again and again. This is the story with the Toronto Maple Leafs. No matter how many great moments we have, the story remains the same. And Game 5 last night, wow, talk about a tough watch. That was probably the worst playoff game, that the Leafs have played that I can remember that has happened in this last 10 years of failure from this team. I don't think I've ever seen a worse game from them. They have abandoned their system. They have started playing pod hockey. They're just throwing the puck around, trying to do silly things and getting silly results, turning the puck over, creating scoring chances for Florida. Florida didn't do anything, exceptional in this game, I didn't think. They took advantage of every chance we gave them, which was a lot because we completely abandoned our system. Anyways, disgusting. And now we're looking down the barrel of a gun. 3-2. Florida has a chance to eliminate us in Sunrise. And if not, we're going back home, where we just got shellacked 6-1, really 6-0. Thank you, Robertson, of all people. He's played 7 minutes in the second round, and he has more goals than Matthews. Amazing. What a team. So the story remains the same. Every moment I can fondly look back on as a fan, I think about it, and I'm just, it's all tainted. It's all disgusting, Just think of the outcome, what happened after that. And they hardly end with, hard-fought battles. The one against Boston is probably the exception last year. We just got bested in every single Game 7, every single deciding game, if you include, Columbus, right? And, this year's team just looks like every other Leafs team, going out with a whimper. And, I think back on all these moments, and I'm like, which one's my favorite? And, I got to say, the Hyman game-time goal against Columbus, 3-goal comeback and elimination game, Matthews OT winner, not even just what a moment, what a game, what a game. But I think my favorite's probably the Kapanen goal in double overtime, the first one I mentioned in this video. And you might be thinking, like, why Kasperi Kapanen in double overtime from Brian Boyle? Like, this is, like, almost a decade ago. The last time I was content with the way the Leafs ended a season, we were playing the Washington Capitals. I don't know what else to say, Even that Tampa series, it was great to win that, but to get decimated in 5 games by the Panthers, who at that time were not some Stanley Cup winner, They were a team that was a wild card team. and hadn't done much of anything. So yeah, my favorite moment in Leafs history happened in 2017 in my second year of high school. And they've made the playoffs every year since. And now we're here. What's the story of this group going to be? We will find out on Friday night. Thank you so much for watching.